Taylor is currently the managing partner at Modern Woodsman of America, and he is also a former UCR graduate. He got his Bachelors of Science in Business Administration. He's also a standout on the UCR soccer team from 2010 to 2013. And then Jason Borderstrass is a diplomat in residence for the U.S. Department of the State. He graduated with a BA in International Relations from Pomona University. So some Southern California homegrown professionals here to help answer your questions about kind of getting to where you want to be in life, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to our panelists, kind of asking them to discuss a little bit about their professional journey. Ben, we'll go ahead and start with you. Can you kind of tell us what interested you about your current profession and how you got to be where you are? And you're muted. Yep.
Yeah, I thought I clicked it. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I don't know how much of a standout soccer player I was, but I was injured half the time. But I was on the team. On the latter end of my career, I was always injured, so that was a fun part. But yes, UCR alum, transferred at my first year. I was actually up at St. Mary's College in Northern California and finished my last 3 years at UC Riverside with a degree in business admin. So my journey started with playing soccer. When I finished my last season, I went down to Central America and was trialing with a few teams in Honduras and got a few offers, but decided to come back to the States and train. And so went over, played in Europe for a little bit, injured once again, believe it or not, came back to get healthy, injured again. And then I said, man, I need to figure out what's next because the soccer thing's not working. So I actually, part of my story here is I left school before I finished. I had about 2 quarters left just to continue my soccer career. So once I was injured and came back, I finished my last 2 quarters, finishing up in 2014 and or 2015. And so when I finished there, I wasn't sure what was next. I went to the spring career fair over there at UCR, that last chance spring fair, since I was again focused on soccer, which, by the way, don't wait last minute to go to those because they teach you a lot on your first one. And I got introduced to 20 plus different companies and had those conversations. But before I started speaking to any of those folks, I actually was stopped and as I was crutching through the main lobby up there in the auditorium, and it was by my director, who I work for now. And he had seen me crutching around twice, and I wasn't sure what to say, which again, why I say go to those career fairs. They teach you a lot about communication, very easy things to say to people, and have discussions and easy questions to ask. And he gave me that information. So I got that confidence to go speak to all these different companies. And I actually came back to him and say, hey, thank you so much for doing that. I really don't know what I'm doing up here. I've got, grass in my shoes still. And I'm trying to figure this whole business thing out. And that's how my journey started with Modern Woodman. I went through the interview process, came to the 4th interview, walked in and said, hey, I appreciate this opportunity. I don't know if I was going to get the job, but I'm actually going to have to decline. So I went into construction with my dad. He's a general contractor. I worked there for 1.5 years. Stay in school, kids. No, I'm kidding. Because construction is a very different experience than sitting here in the air conditioning. I grew up in that field, and I just didn't want to deal with that area anymore. So I switched industries, and this opportunity was still on the table for me. So I got into financial planning at 24. I'm currently 30, so I've been in the industry for 6 years, and it's been a very different change. Always had an interest in money, didn't expect to necessarily be in this field, but because of the, again, the communication and going into those career fairs, was able to run into Chad, and here we are today. So it's a little bit just about my journey to where I got to. I started as a financial advisor, and within 2 years became a managing partner and been running the office out of the Ontario location. And we have 6 different offices throughout Southern California that I currently supervise.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. That's really awesome. I can sympathize. I used to load trucks, and after a couple years of loading trucks, I was like, you know what? Let me go as far as I can with this education thing. Uh,
Yeah.
Jason, would you kind of share your story in terms of kind of how you got to where you are?
Sure. So as was mentioned earlier, I was an international relations major as an undergrad. And um, as a junior, I was trying to figure out what my senior year work study job would be. And as it turned out at that time, our admissions office was looking to hire some people through work study. And it sounded kind of interesting to me because I would be, interviewing students and reviewing some of the, or well, potential students, I guess I should say, reviewing the files, maybe doing some campus tours, things like that. So fortunately for me, I ended up getting that job. And my senior year, I worked generally about 20 hours a week in the admissions office, actually probably, to the detriment of my studies, but I was enjoying the working in the admissions office. So for that year, I really enjoyed it, and I was an international relations major. But I thought, well, maybe I'll do like international student admissions or something like that, since I enjoyed the admissions work. And I graduated and started looking for jobs, and unfortunately had to go a long period of time without really finding what I wanted. Did quite a few kind of odd jobs here and there, short period of time, various things. But almost a year after I graduated, I finally got hired as an admissions officer at Golden Gate University in San Francisco. And that university had and still has a very large international student population. So it was a good fit, and it let me stay in California, which was also great. And about my third day in the office, they were going over with the benefits and told me that one of the benefits was free graduate tuition. So I said, well, where do I sign up, basically? And Golden Gate, some of you may know, is mostly a business school, but it also has a law school. So I ended up going to law school for 4 years at night for free, which was a huge benefit, and something I never would have known was even possible. And during the time I was going to law school, particularly at the beginning, I thought, well, I'll still use this in admissions. There's a lot of legal issues that come up in international admissions in particular. It'll be a useful degree anyway. If they'd had like a master's of education, I probably would have gotten that instead, but they didn't. So, but as I got towards the end of my law school career, I thought, well, maybe I should try to be a lawyer. Maybe I should try it out, leave academia for a while. And as it turned out, around the time I graduated, the US Department of Labor was having a huge hiring. And labor issues had always been an interest of mine. I have a lot of union members in my family. That was something that was very familiar to me, although I didn't end up working very much on union issues as it turned out. But I was hired by Department of Labor as an attorney to work in their Los Angeles office. And it ended up working there for 6 years. It was a great experience. I would have been very happy to stay there for 30, 40 years. But which many people do. But after about 4 or 5 years there, I was mostly working on occupational safety cases, minimum wage, overtime cases, some cases related to discrimination and things like that. But one of the cases that was, well, a couple of cases I had were particularly interesting to me were ones that had an international element to them, mostly workers who'd come over on visas and then were exploited when they were in the US. So I started to work with some colleagues, some people at the Department of State, and to try to get the money back to these workers. And they said, hey, maybe you should think about working for us. So I decided to take the Foreign Service Officer test, got through that process. It took about 2 years. It's a little faster now. And joined the Department of State almost 18 years ago now. And during those 18 years, I've served in Kingston, Jamaica, in Hong Kong, in Tijuana, Mexico, and then several positions in Washington, D.C. Interestingly enough, quite a few of them have had a connection to labor rights. And right now I'm a recruiter for the Department of State in Southern California.
Wow, so you took a couple of different detours there with your education, but still kind of ended up in a position that related to your original major. That's great.
Yes.
All right. So the next question our students want to know is, could you just briefly give an overview of your responsibilities in your current position and kind of what you really enjoy about your role? And as part of that, maybe give us kind of a day-to-day walkthrough of like what your activities look like on a typical day. And Jason, we'll go ahead and start with you this time.
Sure. So right now is so one of the things that's nice about the Foreign Service is that you're changing your jobs every few years. I mean, it's good and bad, right? I like it because you always have new challenges, new experiences, but you know, sometimes you don't really get to go into depth into something to the degree that maybe you could, you know, if you stayed in a more traditional work environment. So for the last year and a half, I've been a recruiter here in Southern California. It's been a little bit strange because it's all been virtual. Which, you know, I didn't of course expect when we bid on our jobs. We basically apply for our jobs about a year in advance. So when I was bidding on the job, I didn't know how this was all going to work out. But right now it's mostly, you know, going to virtual events like this one, virtual career fairs, information sessions, writing emails to students. I do have office hours as well. But to kind of connect a little bit maybe more to the economic side of things, when I was in Tijuana, there I was the head of the political and economic section, which is quite common for our, in the Foreign Service, for the political and economic sections to be combined together. And in that role, I was, you know, visiting factories, meeting with union leaders, meeting with government economic development officials. So a lot of time out of the office talking to people, you know, talking to people who are running, you know, innovation hubs or whatever else. But then also probably a third of my time was writing reports. So that people knew what my analysis was, giving them updates on things like, you know, the medical devices sector or whatever other sectors might exist. So that's one thing that, you know, it changes. Right now, I'm not doing any of that kind of writing, but that's more of a traditional role for a Foreign Service officer like myself.
So you would say that being able to communicate effectively through writing would be a big part of your job?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, good to know. Bennett, again, could you kind of tell us a little bit about your responsibilities and maybe what your typical day-to-day looks like in your profession?
Sure. So as a partner, my roles have changed pretty significantly. You know, with our advisor roles, they are mainly holding client meetings, so sitting down with families and small businesses, data collecting, so figuring out all the different types of products and what do they have in their portfolio currently, what gaps are missing. And so that's the second part, is spending a lot of time doing portfolio design. So taking that data, breaking it down, saying, okay, where are they going? What are they on track for? What's their probability of success? And how can we make it better? Now my role as a partner, I do all of that. I work with all of our new folks and seasoned folks in their meetings and portfolio design, but I do spend most of my time with the individuals that are in their first 24 months here at our firm. And I'm there to help them build their practice, develop, and hopefully build out an office in their local area. So I do a lot of the training. Training in my world is every day of every hour, it seems like. And so with that comes also on the recruiting standpoint. So just as Jason, you know, spends a lot of time in his career fairs and on that end with the schools, I probably don't spend as much time as he does because I'm not a full-time recruiter, but I am going to the career fairs. I do go to the Zoom events and spend probably 25% of my time on the recruiting side. You know, as far as a typical day, there is not one, but what I did, because I was looking through this, is I wrote down my day yesterday, so you can have or today, I mean, so you can have a breakdown. So I got in the office at 7:30 in the morning. We had an 8 a.m. training for an hour. I had a 9 a.m. client meeting. From 10:30 to noon, I had a few personal client calls, and I also had some one-on-one conversations with some of our advisors here in the office. For lunch, I went out to Pasadena. I'm in Ontario, so 35 minutes to see a new office that we opened up in Arcadia, actually, and then had lunch with those two gentlemen. We had a client appointment back here in Ontario at 3 p.m. We had a portfolio review, so it's a follow-up discussion, a good breakdown. We broke down all the data, went through all of it together, and then here we are sitting today in our panel. After that, I will be going home to sleep because it's a lot on that front. Sometimes I leave the office at 2 p.m. Sometimes I leave the office at 9 p.m. It just depends on what my workload looks like. And I'm in complete control of those hours. So yeah, it always looks different. I typically start my day pretty early. I'm I've read a lot of books in the last several years, and I've seen a trend with the early awakening. So I like to start my day early, so that hopefully I can finish it a little bit earlier, spend some time with my son and wife and a future daughter at home. So yeah, that's what the non-typical day looks like, because tomorrow is going to look completely different, but a lot of client meetings, a lot of portfolio design and trainings.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty long day, pretty involved one too, but does it still be construction?
It definitely does. I didn't sweat at all, and I wasn't in an attic getting insulation down my shirt, so I'm happy.
Yeah, nice. Congratulations on your upcoming daughter. I've actually got one coming too here in mid-February.
Oh, congrats. Yeah, our baby's due in April, so thank you.
Nice. All right, so our next question that students kind of wanted to hear an answer to, and then you've talked a little bit about this already, but what kind of information would you like to have known when you were starting out, or what kind of advice would you give to students who are kind of on the verge of graduating, and someone who may be wanting to enter your field?
Back to me.
Yeah, I'll start with Bennett.
Okay. So one of the, going back to my soccer career, I will be the first one to admit now, maybe not back when I hung up the boots, but I wasn't very good at taking ownership for my reality. And so I actually read a book in my first year when I started here at Woodman, called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, two retired U.S. Navy SEALs. And it's the premise that, what happens in life, take ownership for it, learn from your mistakes, learn from your rights and your wrongs, and be better as you move forward. And so that was a very important lesson for me starting out, going into my professional life, leaving construction. I had to make a decision. I have this opportunity to take over a great business that's done well for 30 plus years. It's familiar in the Coachella Valley, and or start over and build something new. And so during those transitions, I had to take ownership for my decisions and not necessarily place blame anywhere else on that. That was number one. Number two, I learned this from my director when I first started, and I said, so basically, who do I need to be? Like, what do I have to be? Who do I need to be to do well in my field? And his response has stuck with me since. And he said, just be you. Be you, and be you, and you're gonna do fine. People want authenticity in this world. They want you as you are, and not everyone's gonna like it, but some people will, some people won't, and that's okay. That's okay. You can push forward. So I built off of that. I said, be you, but get better. So be you, but get better. And those would be my two pieces of advice as you're starting your career, because your first job might not be your last. In some cases it could be. It's very rare nowadays, but the average job change is 7 to 10 times, throughout your career. So it just depends, but yeah, take ownership and be you, but get better.
All right, so be you, but be the best version of you that you can be, right? All right, Jason, how about you? Any pieces of advice for our students coming out to get their first job?
Yeah, so I think for me, is I knew fairly early on that I was not entrepreneurial, right? So that I wasn't going to be the sort of person going out trying to create my own business. And I didn't really think about government, it just kind of ended up that way after working for a university. But if I had been aware of a lot of the opportunities that existed, and maybe some of them didn't exist then, I don't know, but I've learned a lot in this job as a recruiter about programs I didn't even know about before, even though I've, as I said, been with the Department of State now for more than 17 years, whether that's the Pathways internship program, which can not only have you get a paid internship, but then you have a job waiting for you. And that's not just Department of State, that's all the federal government, or the Pathways Recent Graduates program. I don't know if those programs existed then, but I certainly had never heard of them even until I got into this job, and I also will say that it's amazing to me how many different different paths do exist out there, or different opportunities or fellowships. You know, we have 3 fellowships, but lots of my colleagues at other federal agencies or state agencies, there's all sorts of different programs out there. It's just a matter of tracking them down. So, you know, and I know everybody's busy when they're in school, but you know, as somebody who was going to school in the pre-internet generation, I would say it's so much easier to find stuff out now than it used to be. So take advantage of that. I mean, I know that you don't have that point of comparison, but you know, take advantage of this, of the Career Services Center to, like, you know, I don't know if you have the ability to like review people's essays for scholarship or fellowship applications, but if that exists, you know, take advantage of it. Or, you know, just take the time to look for some of these opportunities, because I mean, to me, Pathways internships, you know, you get a paid internship and then you have a job when you graduate. What could be better? You know, I mean, I wish that work study that I did was something like that, you know, but I just think it's just a matter of taking that time to find out, you know, what the opportunities are, whether it's government or something else.
Yeah, I think that's such a useful piece of advice. I think a lot of times some students, they don't utilize the services on campus that are really good at kind of reviewing application materials and helping people find those kinds of positions. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Our next question is really about your organization in terms of what are some entry-level roles that your company typically hires for? And if a student wanted to kind of research working for your organization, what might be some resources you would like to share? And Jason, we'll start with you on this.
Sure. So the main resource to share is our careers website, which is careers.state.gov. And I'll put that in the chat right now. That has you know, all of our different careers on it. I mentioned earlier about Pathways internships and Pathways recent graduates. Those really are the best ways to get into the civil service, not the jobs like I have when you're overseas, but if you're interested in working for anywhere in the federal government inside the US, those really are the best ways, because you, as I said, for Pathways internship, you can have a job waiting for you. Or Pathways recent graduates is for people who have received their degree in the past 2 years. And you may be aware that applying for federal jobs, you know, on usajobs.gov, where all the federal jobs are, it can sometimes be a bit daunting, right? You know, you may be, I've had jobs there that have, I had a job that I posted there, we had 600 applicants, you know, so, I mean, how do you stand out amongst that? It's tough, right? But Pathways, that's different because it's only with graduating in the last 2 years. That's cutting down on the number of people you can compete with just on that basis. And then many of them actually have a cap. They'll only accept the first 50 or 100 or 200 applicants. It cuts it down even more. And especially because there might be one posting, but maybe they'll hire like 10 people, right? So applying for those type of opportunities, I think is particularly important. But then some of our fellowships I mentioned, we have a fellowship for studying IT. We have 2 fellowships for graduate school that you can use to become a foreign service officer. But as I said earlier, those sort of opportunities exist across the federal government. It's just a matter of finding them and then applying for them. The only other thing I would say is that, I mean, I know this is an econ focused panel, but it's pretty clear to me that STEM is where a lot of the opportunities are. So if anyone is thinking of that, I mean, you know, we are desperate for information management specialists, which is our main IT position, you know, both domestically and overseas. But I would say in general for our overseas positions, unless it's IT or engineering, you're probably going to have to build some resume experience, go to grad school, perhaps, you know, do Peace Corps or something like that. Because for most of our foreign service positions, you're probably going to have 5 to 10 years of experience before you would be able to join.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us know that. I mean, again, getting that experience out of school is invaluable for kind of advancing that potential of you getting that career that you're really looking for. Bennett, same question to you. What are some entry-level positions that your company is currently hiring for, and how might students kind of research your company and maybe potentially apply if they need to?
I'm gonna follow suit here with Jason. I put the careers page on the chat there. But as far, and we don't have as many positions as far as the field is concerned, it's just a few. So first we have our summer internship. It's from the second to last week of June to the last week of July each summer. And we do that strategically for a lot of the UCs that finish in that second week of June. And then also on August the 1st, a lot of folks will go back to school in the private college communities, and then also a lot of athletes return back to campus for preseason. So we have a 7-week. It's actually 7 weeks. I think it's 5 Fridays, and it's only on Fridays. It's an educational-based internship, so it's all about, speaking on the economics panel here, we talk a lot about the planning side. Not to go into too much here, but there's a lot of financial planning organizations out there that use these internships for sales opportunities. We don't do that. It is purely educational, and we had 15, I believe, in this last summer internship, most of them on Zoom, but we also have physical locations in Orange County and in Ontario, and for the in-person folks as well. Out of that internship, we only hired one person. He's in pre-contract right now. Actually, he long snapper for SC. He just finished his last season, and so he just started with us a few weeks ago. And that when we're going through that 7-week process, it's really just showing everyone, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And generally it's not the fit for most people. And that's what we want to find, is the right fit, not just any fit, which again, I think makes us unique in our field. As far as full-time careers, so our home office does have career opportunities. It's on there on the website that I put on there. So there's different analyst roles. I don't know who wants to move to Rock Island, Illinois, where it's cold, but they do hire out there. Here in Southern California, we hire for 2 positions specifically. So we have our financial representative full-time position. It's not necessarily an entry-level position. It's just finding the right person that fits who we're looking for. And then I myself and 3 other individuals in leadership are the ones training those individuals and building them up into their careers and learning the hard skills. We also have a pathway to leadership position, which is what I entered in on. So the intent of that is that person that's hired on the pathway to leadership will go into a leadership position or management position at some point in time, assuming they complete the 12-month course on time. And that's generally 18 to 36 months that we see that transition happen.
Nice. Thank you for providing all this information on internships. I know that my students ask me all the time, like, what kind of internships are available, or how do I go about finding them? So I think we're getting a lot of use out of this chat here in order to provide those. Next question is basically, could you all share maybe 3 or 4 specific skills that you think are most important when you're looking to hire in this field? And they could be anything from, say, understanding a particular computer software or program, maybe soft skills in communication, writing, or leadership. So Bennett, we'll start with you. 3 or 4 skills that you think are most important.
Yes. So I'll lead off with saying the soft skills are definitely our priority in our field, because we can teach the hard skills, and I'm very hands-on with I hire 4 people a year. So I spend a lot of time with each individual, making sure that they understand the hard skills. So we're very focused on, communication, as far as, and this is my office here, we have our conference room over there, but if I have 2 clients sitting here in front of me, being able to effectively communicate with each of those folks, and also understanding and figuring out what their needs are and those follow-up questions. Now, we train on all that, but it starts from the time that you walk through the career fair to going through the interview process. What questions do you have prepared for us? We analyze all those things as we're going through our interview process, because just as much as any interviewer is interviewing you, you should be interviewing them, and knowing where you might be going to. And I think Jason can attest to that. Like, it's so important to have questions prepared, and that shows effective communication. And that if you can effectively communicate, we can teach the hard skills. Track record of success, whether that is a GPA, whether that is an athletics career, whether that is something that you built a small business and were successful in. We just want to see that people know that you have accomplishments and people believe in your direction. That starts with the resume, and that starts with all those other items that I listed there. And then the 2 that you can't really measure, although we do have tests that we have people take during our interview process, is work ethic and coachability. So is that person willing to put in the, I don't have to be here. I don't have to be here at the time I get here, and I don't have to leave at the time that I leave, but I choose to. And we have a lot of folks here that have that same mentality. And then coachability. So just being able to take, I've always been able to take coaching, but there are some things that sting more than others. And, I've learned to be able to take that constructive criticism, as long as it's constructive criticism, there is a difference, and then apply that and be better. And so those are, we have questions throughout our interview process to really see, what does your work ethic look like, and a lot of those measurements that we use in those questionnaires as well.
Thank you so much. It sounds like a good list of skills to have. Being able to be coachable, having a good track record of success are all very important. Jason, same question to you. If you could go over maybe 3 or 4 skills that you'd want your applicant to have, make them ideal fit for you.
Sure. So we mentioned earlier about writing, and that really is critical for any job at the Department of State. But not really creative writing, right? We're looking for brevity, really, getting to the point. When you're writing a report, an analysis from overseas, you are lucky basically if a senior official reads the first paragraph, which is always a summary for us. Sometimes they may only read the title, right? So you got to be able to get across the important points very quickly. And somewhat related to that is that we are also a rank conscious organization. And that, doesn't mean like people are treating you badly, if you're brand new or something, but there is still a hierarchy, right? And the ambassador or the consul general, they have the final say, right? So you can't have too much pride in what you write. And when you write something, it's going to be edited, right? So you just have to be adaptable that way, which is one of the other points I had was that adaptability, both in that sense, but also with cultural adaptability, the fact that in the Foreign Service, you're changing your location every 2 to 3 years. But even if you're in Washington, D.C. in a civil service position, your coworkers are changing frequently, because Foreign Service people come into Washington, D.C. generally for 2 years in a position, and then they go back out again. So you have to be adaptable in that sense as well. And then just the last thing is composure. There can be very high pressure situations at the Department of State. You can imagine the kind of issues that we're dealing with around the world, but you have to be able to keep your cool in those kind of situations.
There's a lot of overlap there. So again, good communication, whether through speaking or through writing, and talking about adaptability kind of relates to what Ben was talking about, being coachable, right? Being able to adjust when needed. So yeah, so again, shows to show you that really these skills are important for any position. All right, so our next question is, what does your recruitment process look like for your organization? I know you kind of talked a little bit about this already, Jason, but we'll start with you. Can you provide students with an idea of what to expect as they go through this recruitment process?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that you'll see between a government organization like the Department of State and the private sector is that recruiters like me have nothing to do with the selection process. So I send out the message, I talk to you, I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. But at the Department of State, there's a whole other set of people called the Board of Examiners in our case, but they have different names at different agencies that are just that make the, that basically are in charge of running the process. So for the Foreign Service too, we have a lot of steps, which I won't go into now, but those various steps do take a while, basically a year to a year and a half. Civil service tends to be faster. Department of State, though, if you apply for a job which needs a security clearance, which is most of our positions, it'll probably still take at least 6 months. If it's not a security clearance, then it maybe could be a matter of a few weeks. But you have to be patient. And then the other thing is that you have to meet the requirements, right? And maybe in the private sector, if you're, they may say like, well, these are our kind of preferred qualifications. Federal government, if it's in USA jobs and says it's a requirement, you absolutely must meet it. And one of the saddest things I see sometimes is people who are very close to meeting the qualifications and they apply. And for us, once you have an unsuccessful application, you have to wait a year to apply again for the Foreign Service. So, if it says you need 1 year of experience as an administrative assistant and you apply with 11 months, you're gonna get denied, and you won't be able to apply until you have almost 2 years of experience. Whereas if you'd waited another month, you would have had the year and you could apply then. So anyway, but there is that's strict delineation between myself and then the people who are involved in the actual determination of who joins the Foreign Service. And the Civil Service side as well, there's a separate process, a separate group of people who are involved with that.
All right, thank you so much. Bennett, same question to you. Kind of what does your recruitment process look like, and maybe what advice could you give for people to kind of navigate through that process?
Yeah, of course. So again, going back to a lot of career fairs, we also have introductions within the community. I have a lot of relationships with people on this call here that I've met with outside of the career fairs and discuss what we're trying to accomplish. And so we sometimes get introductions to students that fit in that category of what we're looking for, with coaches and everything of that nature as well. We have 4 interviews. So we have 2 initial interviews, that's with myself, and the second one's with myself and our director. Our third interview is our associate's interview. So you actually meet someone, an advisor in the firm. That's 15-20 minutes of just getting to ask somebody who does the daily duties. That's different than mine, essentially, as an advisor. And then we have a final interview. So during that, we have 2 different tests that are taken. One is personality driven, one is math driven. The personality is just tell us, do they fit what we're looking for? Are they fit in our culture? And then the math is, are they going to be able to pass their securities examinations? Because we do take a lot of tests, and the tests never stop on the financial planning sector if you're always, wanting to get better and develop, which are the type of people we like to hire. We also have a background check and formal application that is actually started after the first interview. Our application is the resume. So when we get something in, I can't stress how important it is with that cover letter to be specific. I get cover letters all the time with somebody else's name or a totally different position for Pepsi, or something like that. And it just is immediately like, okay, they didn't take the time to look this through. This isn't the right fit. So make sure you check that. I see it way more often than not on cover letters. And sometimes I'm like, they would have been better off not sending a cover letter than sending what they sent. As far as process timelines, we're generally a 60-day process in getting through the interview process. We run those backgrounds and application and tests between the first and third interviews. So we already have an understanding by the 4th interview and final interview if we can hire this person. We do have strict guidelines, not quite as strict as Jason's, but they are, when we're looking at our organization as a whole, their criminal history, and if there's any felonies, they can't be hired. Misdemeanors, it depends on what the misdemeanor is. So there's a lot that goes into that background check as well on our end, just again, not as extensive as Jason's. So that's what our process looks like.
All right, thank you so much. That's really important. So as Jason mentioned, make sure you're kind of looking at the guidelines of what the position is requiring and that you fulfill those guidelines. And as Bennett said, make sure you proofread your cover letters. Make sure that you are, applying definitely for the job that you're supposed to be applying for, right? That's a good way to get your resume thrown out. Kind of last question that I have for you before we open it up to the students is there's kind of been a push recently for more advanced degrees as a way for students to separate themselves maybe from the pack. So we just want to know, how do you all view a graduate degree, or how do recruiters in your field view a graduate degree? Do you have any advice or guidance in terms of how important it is in getting a position in your organization? So either a master's or PhD. Bennett, we'll start with you.
There's no such thing as too much education. Now, that being said, most people in our field don't advance in their education on the MBA or the PhD side, but they do. Like I took an exam last year. I'm going to be taking an exam this year. I've taken a total of 10 exams in 6 years since I've been here. So there's always constant education. So it's a little bit different in that sense, but I have not gotten my MBA. I will get my MBA in the future. I also me personally would like to get my PhD in leadership in the future at some point. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. It's not on my 5-year plan quite yet, but it isn't a requirement. So we do require a bachelor's degree. We do require a 4-year degree. We do not require a master's or PhD. If somebody has it, we're definitely not going to turn them away, as they have, a certain extent of knowledge and past that bachelor's degree that could be very applicable to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So right now I supervise 17 individuals, and 3 of them have a master's degree, 14 of them do not.
Thank you so much. Jason, how about you? How does your particular field or profession view that graduate?
So for our civil service positions, if they're policy positions, they probably do require a bachelor's degree, and some of them might require a master's degree. Our tech positions and things like that, we have accounting, we have those positions, not necessarily. On the foreign service side, many people are surprised to learn that for foreign service officers, there is no education requirement. However, 97% of foreign service officers do have a bachelor's degree, and a slight majority have master's degrees, but it's not a requirement. For foreign service specialists, I kind of alluded to this, we have foreign service specialist positions overseas like engineers, IT, we have doctors, we have nurses, we have law enforcement. It really depends on the position. Our IT positions, many of those only require an associate's degree. Some of them actually only require high school. We have some security positions that only require high school, but most of our foreign service specialist careers do require a bachelor's and some number of years of experience. Some do require masters. The only one that requires a doctorate are we do have both psychiatrist and medical doctor positions. I mean, like what Bennett was saying, there are certainly opportunities for education throughout your career, including sometimes to be sent to a university to get a master's degree. But we have a Foreign Service Institute, and we pay people to learn languages, which is a nice benefit of being, if you're in the Foreign Service, too, if you don't have the language of the country you're going to. But I would say in general, don't do education to the exclusion of getting experience, right? I mean, having a master's degree right after a bachelor's degree and no experience isn't necessarily going to set you apart as much as, say, somebody who went out and got some experience and then maybe got a master's degree, or got the master's degree and then has some experience, especially for foreign service officer. Our average age on entry for foreign service officer is 34. So that gives you some idea that, most people have some number of years of experience in the workforce in addition to whatever other additional education they might have.
Yeah, thank you for that response. I was about to ask that follow-up question, is maybe which would be preferred, a master's degree or maybe the 2 years of work experience that you might be able to get instead of that degree. But I think that covers it, right? So obviously both is better than neither, right? But it's good to have both the experience and that advanced education if possible. All right, so with that in mind, I think we're going to open it up to our students now, see if they have any questions. So all students in attendance, you can either type out your question in the chat, and we're going to try to get to them, or you can raise your virtual hand, and I'll call on you to ask your question. So whichever you feel kind of more comfortable asking a question, you go ahead and start letting the questions roll. So you can either raise your virtual hand, or you can type it out in the chat, whichever you prefer. All right, so I'm going to see your virtual hand up. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, so my question is, when applying for jobs, and I noticed that a lot of them require a bachelor's degree, I hesitate because I'm not sure if I should apply because I don't have it yet. And I'm not sure if I should put that I am about to graduate and put my graduation date, or if I should wait to apply after I graduate.
Jason, I'll let you tackle that one first. You kind of mentioned the idea of applying before you have the full credentials.
Right. So for, for example, Pathways recent graduates of the Department of State for the civil service, you have to have the bachelor's degree in hand before you can apply. Some other agencies, maybe you don't have to, but Department of State, you do. And for, positions that require a bachelor's degree, you must have it in hand before you apply. So, but as I said, Foreign Service Officer, you don't. So I often encourage people who are thinking about the Foreign Service Officer career, you can go ahead and take the test now. It's a free test. The chances of being selected before you get a bachelor's degree is not high, but if you're really interested in it, it does give you experience going through the process. But yeah, if the position description says a bachelor's degree required, don't apply before you have it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to respond?
Yeah, Ben.
Okay, there's I didn't know if you said something there. So for any business position, not just financial planning, definitely apply before you have that degree, because they will have that as a requirement, but there might be 6 months of training. There might be 1 year of training. They might say, you're a perfect candidate, call us in 6 months. So you can put yourself where I put the opposite end of the spectrum where I put myself, which is you're not walking into the spring last chance career fair. I love how they call it last chance too, because it's what it was for me. And you already have everything lined up. So on a business perspective, definitely apply well in advance. I actually was always very impressed when I'd have a second year applying for our full-time position. I'm looking at him or her resume. I'm like, hey, I can help you with some of this stuff, fixing up your resume and making a certain thing stand out, because you want to see those people succeed. But take advantage of it. Take advantage of the time.
All right, thank you. Adrian, you had your virtual hand up. You want to go ahead and ask the question?
Yeah, so I guess I have a question in regards to the previous, but so I'm a little bit older, returning back to school, kind of like towards my mid-30s. And I have my AA in economics, and I'm going for my BA in economics at UCR. But I have quite an extensive resume in terms of like work history, in terms of management, restaurant jobs, bartending, so the social skills. And I am coming up to my graduation this this coming fall quarter, or not fall quarter, spring quarter. So I've been kind of looking into, I guess, jobs at this time, but with this being my last like real major quarter, I only have one class after this. I'm trying to look into getting into the business field from the restaurant field, and I kind of was wondering whether or not I should be applying now, or if I should be like waiting a little bit later.
I think you said my name. It washed out there a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So when you said, okay, so for your resume purposes, you said you had management experiences. Is that in the restaurant industry?
Yes, management in restaurant industry, and also I did have an office job in this is like quite a few years ago. I want to say like 2009, 2010, in it was more of a kind of a scam company, but the job that I did was not scamming. It was the auto warranty calls. So I managed the floor for the office. I didn't realize that the warranties were bunk. So,
Gotcha.
but I managed the call center, I guess, with getting sure that all the calls loaded into the call program, and then everybody was kind of like hitting their numbers.
Okay.
So.
And as far as when you say business is a very wide spectrum, what are you looking on administrative side? Are you looking on sales? What
I'm looking for more
response.
Yeah, more analytics. Either like financial analyst or kind of in a finance role.
Okay. So the thing in your favor, even though you opened up with saying mid-30s, is you have the work experience. So even if it's not directly related to that field, of analytics or as an analyst, you do have experience in working with other people, you know, for several years. So as far as your application process, you know, extending it out and waiting isn't going to necessarily change the fact that, you know, of your current situation, unless you're expecting to be in a different position in the next 60 to 90 days working, that would help with your resume experience. But, you know, folks in the business world, they're going to take it. That's one thing that I know, depending on what they're looking for, but you have actual work experience that will benefit you with applying for certain jobs. So, and I don't know if you were kind of gearing towards the resume side, I would put your highest positions that you held, even the restaurant industry, there's going to be not really much of a direct correlation to analytics, but you were able to lead and manage and effectively do that. That's what I would prioritize on your resume.
Nice. Jason, did you want to follow up with anything on that one?
I would just add that if you're thinking at all about a foreign service officer career, you know, as I said earlier, there is no academic requirement, right? So you could apply now, and we do have the economic career track where you can use your economic skills as an economic analyst, basically overseas, as I was talking about before. You get a lot of interesting experiences visiting factories or talking to union leaders or whatever else. But I would say, you know, for the Department of State's purposes anyway, if you're applying for a foreign service officer career, I always think experience like in the restaurant industry is great. You know, people skills, management skills, dealing with tough situations sometimes, those are all very relevant for the foreign service. As I mentioned, I spend a lot of time talking to people. You know, I had to try to draw information out from people who sometimes weren't always so happy to see me. But also everybody in the foreign service, our highest priority is providing services to American citizens when we're overseas. Everybody has to do that, either as your main job, which everyone has to do for at least 1 year, or as a duty officer after hours. So you're dealing with US citizens who maybe have been arrested or who somebody has died or whatever. So you're dealing with these kind of difficult personal situations for a lot of people. So I think service industry experience is always very relevant for that too.
Nice. Thank you again for those responses. So we have a student with a virtual hand up, but we also have some interesting questions coming through in the chat, one of which is from Helen. It says, would you rather have a candidate who has little to no social media presence or a candidate with a big social media presence? All right, Jason, I'm going to let you answer that one first.
Yeah, so I guess I would say it doesn't really matter. It depends a little bit on what's in it, right? I mean, if there's a lot of references to like taking drugs or doing illegal things, that's more of an issue than having, you know, lots of interesting posts on, you know, fashion or whatever else. So I wouldn't worry, you know, for us, yes, we do have a security clearance process that they're going to look at your social media. So, you know, just don't have too many things on there that you would be embarrassed for us to find.
Any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I'm the wrong millennial to ask. I don't have much social media, but so it really doesn't matter. In fact, most people think going into our field that would be important because, oh, you know more people, you can connect to more people and you can build your practice that way. But that's not how it works. So whether it's, I do recommend having social media though, like LinkedIn specifically, just because you can stay connected in the business world. But as far as, you know, Instagram and Facebook and everything else, I don't even know what else. There's a lot more now, but that's not necessary by any means. In fact, as Jason alluded to, it could hurt you a lot more than it could help you, depending on what you have on there.
All right, nice, good to know. So before we get to a data question, we have one more in the chat. This one is for Mr. Bennett, particularly with regards to, do you follow any soccer clubs or are you a follower of a club? So just real quickly, can you answer that one
I don't see the question on here. I am a gunner through and through. I played for the academy out here in Southern California, so Arsenal FC in England.
Nice, good to know. And then he also had a general question for both of the panelists. It says, how much of the stuff that you took or learned in classes pertain to real world situations or your job field? And
Could you say the question one more time, please?
I'm sorry. It says, how much of what you learned in your classes pertain to any real world situations or your particular job?
So when I got, so for the business side, specifically on some of the core classes, you know, that communication class, I think it's 102 or 103, I can't remember at UCR, but I forget what the professor's name was. Everyone comes to me, everyone in my entire region, to help them write an email because of that class, and I almost kind of despise the professor for it, but I do appreciate it because now I know how to properly draft up an email. So I got a lot of applicable skills from, I got golden nuggets from each class. So there were little things from each class that I took, and that's like anything, any book you read, anything you learn from anybody, there's just little applicable golden nuggets that you can use. I will say that as far as understanding the human brain, and you know, when we're going through our conversations here on their finances and figuring out, you know, what are they trying to accomplish, some of those psych classes are really great just to understand what other folks are thinking. They might not think like you, and so looking for those triggers. So there's a lot. There's a lot of little things that I got out of it. I wouldn't say that one class just kind of made or break, you know, made it or broke my career by any means. So make sure you take away those golden nuggets.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing, but I think you're passing it to me. So I'll just say, for me, you know, and probably this is true in most academic degrees, you know, I learned a lot about theory of international relations, but the actual practice, not so much. I don't know if that's changing. I do know of a former Foreign Service officer who's now a professor, and he said he's trying to bring in more of the actual practice. I mean, I didn't know what, before I joined the Department of State, I didn't know what a démarche was, which is when you deliver a message to another country officially. I didn't know about diplomatic notes. I didn't know about, you know, other ways that multilateral organizations functions. I mean, I had some general idea of the United Nations, but you know, the details about the different committees and things like that, I had no idea. I mean, the good thing, as I said, is we do have a very strong Foreign Service Institute, so there's a lot of training that's provided you. But in terms of like, you know, how this job would be on a day-to-day, I didn't really get much, you know, kind of concrete examples of how that would be.
Gotcha, thanks. All right, Jacob has had his virtual hand up for a while. Jacob, did you want to go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks. I just had a I also I'm pursuing like a BA in economics, and I just had a question on like on my resume. I don't have too much like professional type of like experience, so but I did have like a month of working as like a insurance sales agent at Aflac, and it was just like a month, like I mean 1 month, and so I was just wondering like if I should even put that on my resume. Like I don't know if that seemed like it was unprofessional to like just be there for 1 month. I was just wasn't sure.
All right, we'll go ahead and start with Jason this time. What do you think? Was short blips of job there on your resume, is that beneficial or not beneficial?
It can be beneficial, and I for federal government, we're a bit different than private sector in the sense that, in general, our resumes are much more like CVs in academia. They tend to be much longer. If you've ever been on USA jobs, and if you're thinking about applying for federal government positions, I would strongly urge you to take a USA jobs seminar. They offer them quite regularly, and they have a really good one on resumes. But you know, for those, you basically need to include everything that shows that you meet the qualifications for the job. So if you got those qualifications from a 1-month position, then absolutely include it. And because you don't have the space limitations that you might have in the private sector, in general, it's better to include things rather than not. The one slight caveat to that would be for the Pathways recent graduates positions or the Pathways internships that I mentioned earlier. The resumes for those positions are not so critical because they're not looking for people to have experience, right? They are mainly geared for students or recent graduates, so they're not expecting so much. So for those, what you put on your resume is not quite as critical. But in general, I would say yes, include anything that's relevant for the position.
Okay.
All right, Bennett, same question to you. Include a short blip of a 1 month or so at a position on your resume, or maybe leave that off.
So it depends, two things. If you got a license, so if you went through the testing process and got a license, then it's not necessarily a bad thing to put on because those can be rigorous tests. Second thing is the reason why, because that they will ask, what happened, during your 1 month at AFLAC. So if there's a legitimate, good, solid reason, it wasn't the career path, I went through all the testing, it seemed like I wanted to go that direction, and you know what, I just really don't, I want to go down this path, then I think it's totally fine. So as long as those two things add up from a business, because what from a business resume, folks are looking at, did you have 15 jobs in 4 years, or did you have 1 or 2 jobs in 4 years in college? Because that's the last, people don't want job hoppers. They want somebody who wants to come, stay, work a whole career, 10 years, whatever that timeline may be, but definitely the long term. So I don't know if that's the right thing to say or not, but that's what people definitely are evaluating when they see that.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if you guys already covered this, but like, you guys look at like a million resumes. Just what is like, like what's like stands out? Like, what are just like key things would you say? Yeah,
Bennett,
you.
if you wanna, yeah, Bennett, if you want to get and start on this one.
Okay. So we do have someone who does sift through the initial resumes that they get through, like Handshake and those items there. What we are looking for is formatting, very important. Did you format the resume well? Because we also do understand that, like, I worked in construction because I played soccer. So I played soccer and I worked construction in the summers with my dad. So there was no time during the year to work unless I wanted to get less sleep, and that wouldn't have been good. So we do understand that that's a part of your life potentially, that you can't necessarily put those things on there. So as long as it's formatted correctly, internships. There are so many internships. In fact, internships are probably a lot more important on our side than the work experience, because your work experience in college is going to be working at the, at the Panda Express in the auditorium area, I forget what it's called, and working somewhere on campus where it's not really relevant per se to a career in business or a career in government. But your internships can make a significant difference. And a lot of them are very flexible. A lot of them are not flexible. So you just have to find the right ones. But I would say formatting, I look at a lot and I'll see, like, I have a stack over here. So I'll see immediately the formatting in it. And I know the Career Center will help you with all of that. They helped me, again, last chance career fair guy here. So I went over there and got the last chance help. And it was just very simple fixes, like making the titles a little bit larger, making the base a little bit smaller on the text. And again, the formatting doesn't look nice. Is it aesthetic when you look at the resume? That will attract someone's attention. And then depending on the position, you might need requirements. If you don't fill that, they'll throw it out anyways, but at least you got past that first look.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Jason, Yasmin had a similar question for you about kind of what stands out in a resume for a government position.
Yeah, so one thing I just put it in the chat is that for all government hiring, there is a veterans preference. So, in many cases, the top candidates, if we have a few hundred people apply for a job, it's not unusual if the top, 20 candidates are all veterans because they get extra points for that. So if you are thinking about federal employment and you're interested in the military, it's a great way to get that preference. But for the foreign service too, I would say that we have essays that you have to write when you register if you want to become a foreign service officer. You really cannot spend too much time reviewing those, right? Or having other people help you with them or review them or something. Because if you pass the test, one of the saddest things that we see is we don't look at the essays until someone passes the test. But one of the saddest things you see is someone who passes the test, you're then basically starting over at zero. If you barely pass or if you pass with a high score, it doesn't really matter. Then we're looking at your resume and your essays. If those essays have typographical errors or clearly weren't thought through or don't connect to the 13 dimensions, which I put in the chat there, we tell you up front what we're looking for, right? So, or if it's too much of creative writing, as I mentioned earlier, as opposed to getting to the point and telling us what was the situation, the task, your action, and the result, the STAR method, right? If you make those mistakes, then you're really shooting yourself in the foot. So take the time. I always say to people, if you're going to rush to get the application, to register, don't rush. Wait. It's going to, we're going to offer it again in another 4 months, right? Just take the time. If that's what it takes, it's got to be really good because we have so many applicants that mistakes in there are not going to help you because there is so much competition, that you really need to stand out. It really does have to be perfect.
All right, thank you for that. Jefferson, you've had your virtual hand up for a little while. Did you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I had a question for both of you regarding schedule flexibility. So I was wondering if your career paths offer like some form of schedule flexibility, because I'm like a second year full-time student and I'm trying to figure out whether or not I should make my schedule be more oriented towards having less classes and having more time to like do internships or jobs or whatever.
Bennett, did you want to go ahead and tackle that one first?
Sure. I for most career fields, even in something like financial planning, which is more entrepreneurial, you're going to always see more structure on the front end with the people who do well. And then it just works so well that you kind of never change it and you stay structured, but it's, it's my decision to structure it the way that I see fit. There is, in financial planning, you see real estate, mortgage industry. So a lot of the positions that have similar opportunities, you will see flexibility from that, but that comes at a cost too. So that comes at, sometimes I leave the office at 9 p.m. And sometimes I leave the office at 2 p.m. So with that, we find that the first 5 years is very, very structured. And then again, those people kind of keep that structure. So yes, there's flexibility, but it does come at a cost.
Jason, anything that you want to elaborate there?
I would just mention that for our pathways internships that I've highlighted a couple of times tonight, those at the Department of State at least typically are designed to take place during breaks from school, right? Because for us, we are looking for people to work at most of our internships, 30, 35, 40 hours a week, right? So typically what you'll see is people come and work for 3-4 months in the summer or something, and then they go in what we call leave without pay status, and then they'll come back maybe, the holiday break, and then maybe come back at spring break or something like that. That's more typical for the federal government. I mean, there might be some agencies that do have, part-time internships that you can do. And, for us, if you do get a job, you wouldn't be able to continue your education, right? Occasionally we get people who are like pursuing a doctorate or something, and they get an offer from us and they say, well, can I still finish? Or even occasionally a bachelor's degree. And the answer really is no, because I mean, maybe you can do like one class here and there for the next several years. But for us, the job is so, so much time. It depends a little bit on the position, but that's the other thing that's nice about the foreign service, I would say, is that your first couple of assignments, usually your first 2, are guided. But then after that, you pick what you want to bid on, right? So you can decide what positions you want to find, apply for. And generally speaking, people will be fairly honest. Like, is this a job that's a 9 to 5, or is this a job where you're going to have to be working a lot of, overtime or weekends or whatever it might be. So, you can kind of develop your own career to an extent. And then the other nice thing about it is, even if you get into a position that you don't like so well in the foreign service, at least at the most, you're going to do it for 2 more years, right? And then you can go on and you can go on to something else. So there's that built in because of the fact that you're changing your jobs every 2 to 3 years.
And then Jason, we have a question directed at you in the chat. How does local government job experience look on a resume when applying to federal jobs?
It's any kind of government experience is going to be valuable, because it's similar. I mean, obviously federal would probably be the best, but state, local, whether it's county or city, that's still going to be valuable because you're still dealing with similar issues, so I would say any kind of government experience is going to be relevant for pretty much any position at the Department of State or throughout the federal government.
All right, thank you so much. Salma, you've got your virtual hand up again. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
Okay, so mine is kind of like a 2-part question. So it was in regards to the formatting the resume that Bennett was talking about. So when I work on my resume, I hear a lot about like when you submit your resume, it goes through like the ATS or the scanning. So I recall, Bennett, you were saying something about someone looks through it. So is it like an actual person or a software? And I ask that mainly because, I mean, obviously we all want to pay attention to the words we use. So, like our resume gets selected. And also like at my current job, I switched from, I recently switched departments, so from finance to IT. So I was wondering, like, how would I include something like that without making it look messy and like messing up the format? And I think that also relates to Helen's question in the chat. Like, would I even include something like that in my resume if I'm applying to a finance job?
Ben, I'm gonna let you respond first.
Yeah. So in regards to your first question, well, I'm thinking of the resume one right now, and I might have you repeat the first one. But the resume one, I've seen it where you have 2 positions within a period of time, and you just connect the 2, so you'll have your financial position / IT position. Now, if it fits in the formatting of 1 page and you're able to add that in, kind of like how it looks on LinkedIn. So if you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see financial representative from this time to that time, managing partner from this time to that time. It's 2 separate roles, but in the same organization. That does look nice, but if it doesn't fit and there's other important information, I think merging it is totally fine, and you could just add to the role and responsibilities. I remember your first question now. So your first question was, is it a human scan or a tech scan? We don't have a tech scan. I know certain organizations do. So it is going through our head administrative assistant, who is cycling through the locations of folks based off of our office locations, and then they forward those out. I'm just telling you, most make it through, but some don't, just because, again, going through that formatting and what it looks like, if it's chicken scratch, it doesn't make it through.
Jason, did you want to respond to that question as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that for federal government, for pathways, recent graduates positions, I mentioned earlier that there's often a cap on the number of applications they will accept, 50 or 100 or 200. And that's because a real person is looking at them, and they'll look at your resume, they'll look at what you've submitted. For other positions at USA Jobs, you will see, and again, there is a seminar on this too, so you may want to take that one as well, but you'll see on a lot of the applications that there will be a series of questions. And federal jobs in general, unless it's a Pathways Recent Graduates position, in general, you're going to need to take probably at least an hour to go through the application process, because they're going to ask you probably 20, 30 questions. And those are basically the screening questions, really. So that's sort of the computer part of it, right? But if you pass those questions, if you answer them correctly, and sometimes you'll even get a message right away saying, sorry, you don't qualify. But if you answer those questions right, then it will go to a person who will review to see, to see if you can go further in the process.
All right, we have a question in the chat, and this one is obviously industry specific, but it asks, what specific training do new hires undergo, and what do employers expect them to accomplish within the first 6 months? So Jason, we'll open up to you first this time, just with regards to the kinds of positions that you're in or looking for. How would you answer that question?
Sure. So for foreign service positions, everyone goes to orientation in Washington, D.C. area for generally at least 3 to 6 months. And then if you're going to a post where you need a language, then you might stay another year even. So we are big believers in training. Later in your career, you might even have 2 years in language training, depending on the language. So, but that's for civil service, you probably would just have maybe a couple of weeks of training and maybe some training that you would do throughout your career.
Okay, Bennett, same question to you.
So specific training. So we have 4 examinations that we require to be completed in the first 6 months. 3 of those are securities examinations, and 1 is insurance. And during that time, we also have contract requirements every 90 days in the first 12 months. So not to get into all the specifics there, but it is difficult entering into the financial planning field for the first 6 months and even up to 24 months to make that transition. And there's a lot of testing, a lot of testing that goes into it. It doesn't stop at that point, as I mentioned before. There's still more, but in the first 6 months, we have those 4 exams.
All right, thank you so much. So we are about out of time here. With that in mind, I'm going to ask one last question of both of our panelists here before thanking them for being here. And that is, if you could leave just one lasting piece of advice or one thing that you wanted students to get out of this, what would it be? And Jason, we will start with you on it.
Yeah. So I sort of alluded to this earlier with the, coming from the pre-internet generation and, how much more information is available these days. Take the time to research the companies and the positions or the organizations before you talk to someone like me. I mean, I will talk to you about, what opportunities there are at the Department of State, but it's not really the best use of your time to ask me questions about things that are on the careers.state.gov website. The questions you want to ask me are the things like, well, I read this and I have a follow-up question, or I read this and I have this unique personal situation. That's a much better use of your time than saying to me, well, so how do I apply for the Foreign Service Officer test? I mean, that information is on the website. It's there. Take advantage of that. That would be my advice.
All right, Bennett, how about you?
So one of the things I see most out of recent college graduates, I saw with a lot of my friends and still to this day, is they go into a career field because they offered them the position, not because that's really what they want to do. Now, sometimes that has to happen on the front end, and that's totally fine. But I've seen people completely 360 and go 180 and go a different direction in a different industry, and it's because they don't really know what they want. Something that I do every year is I sit down in the last 2 weeks of December. I actually start building the list all the way in August till the end of the year. But as I start building up my 1 and my 5 year plan. So where do I want to be in 12 months in 2022, and where do I want to be in 5 years at the end of 2027? And I challenge everyone to sit down and do that, because you might take a different career direction once you do that. Because again, I saw a lot of my friends, similar situations as me in athletics, and also people who were not in athletics and were in school for 4 years the same time I was, go into a career path that they don't like. Then they end up leaving, because, and if they would have spent a little time on the front end, they would have known that they didn't want to do that. And just by having that clear vision of where you want to go, it'll help you make those decisions. It might not answer everything for you, but it'll help you make the decisions quicker.
All right, that definitely sounds like good advice from both of our panelists. All right, it is 6:50 when I believe this was scheduled to end, so we are officially out of time. With that in mind, I'd like to thank our panelists, Bennett and Jason, for being here. Again, it means a lot to us that you all took the time out of your busy day and away from your families to come speak to us today. So thank you so much for helping us out.